This is an introduction meeting to a series on the Yoga Sutras. It's going to be a meditation series and a discussion series. Basically, it's going to be about 40 minutes, which is the length of a session that you can do on Zoom for free. If it turns out that we need the sessions to go longer and there's enough interest, I can obviously go off of free, but I want to make this financially a workout for me financially as well. I know we're all potentially struggling during these times. So this call may be shorter than that just because it's introduction, but in general, the sessions ongoing weekly are going to be about 40 minutes. They may go over, as I said. And that the structure of the class, hold on, there's our other person. The structure of the sessions is going to be 20 minutes of meditation to start. That's going to be 10 minutes of, the first meditation is going to be 10 minutes. That's going to be simply the simplest meditation, I suppose, where I'm going to be chanting the Yoga Sutras. And I'll talk about those in a minute for those of you that don't know what those are. And you're simply going to be sitting comfortably in whatever position helps you to meditate, and listening to me chant. And the sounds of the Yoga Sutra, I'm going to be chanting in Sanskrit for the first 10 minutes. And I don't really want you to feel like, be puzzled by the Sanskrit. Most of you probably don't know Sanskrit. I am a novice. I can chant in it and I know some words, but I'm by no means an expert. But I don't want you to worry about that. Sometimes we feel weird when we're listening to another language. I just want you to meditate, breathe, and just let the sounds wash over you for that first 10 minutes. And then the second 10 minutes, I'm going to chant both in Sanskrit and in English. And that way, in that second meditation, you can still do the same thing I'm asking you to do in the first meditation, which is just let the sounds wash over you, just listen to them, not think about them much. Or if you'd rather, you can think about the meaning of them when you hear the English, and maybe it's going to start your mind going. And you can also, during the second, if you wish, you can open your eyes and watch what's going on the screen. I'll have the Sanskrit and the English also posted on the screen for those of you that are visual. You're welcome to do that. Or like I say, if you'd rather meditate with your eyes closed, that's great as well. And speaking of eyes, this is a video chat, but you can turn your video off, or you can turn your video off so that I can't see you. You don't have to feel self-conscious about it. It's 7 in the morning and I haven't put on any makeup and I don't look so great. You know, this is me in the morning at 7. And that's all fine. You can mute yourself, all those good things, that just because I want you to be comfortable through this meditation. So we'll go through that 20 minutes of meditation. And one thing I'll point out is I want you to breathe during the meditation. The way I will be breathing, I will be chanting the Yoga Sutra, one sutra at a time. And each chant or each breath will be about 10 seconds. So it's like a 5-second inhale, a 5-second exhale. When I'm exhaling, I'm going to be chanting. And you can time your exhales to that. And then take an inhale and then the next exhale when I chant. Or if it's more comfortable for you, and for some people it is, if you're new to breath and you feel like you're not getting enough air, I might suggest you reverse that. And when I start to talk or chant, you inhale for the length of that while I'm chanting or talking, maybe even a little longer, and then you exhale, and then you begin your inhale when I start chanting the next sutra. That's a good way to do it. It really doesn't matter for you, because you're not chanting, which way you do that. Obviously, me as the chanter, I'm going to be exhaling like you do when you talk. And also, when I do put up the slides that have the Sanskrit and the English on it, there'll be a little arrow that's going to be appearing for 5 seconds. It's going to be a down arrow or an up arrow, and then the opposite arrow, up or down arrow, is going to appear for the next 5 seconds. And you can use that as a visual indicator of how to take a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, regardless of which way you're doing that. So that can be a little bit of a tool for you, or an aid for you in your breathing. And there's nothing magical about that. Well, there is much magic about breath, but as someone new to breath, don't get too tied up in that either. Take a breath when you need to. If it feels better for you at the beginning of this to simply breathe at your normal breathing pattern, please do that. And maybe if you continue with this series, you'll slowly get to that part where you can breathe at that 5-second inhale, exhale, or 10-second full breath cadence, which is a great cadence. And then after the 20 minutes of chanting in the regular call, or the regular sessions that we'll be doing starting next week, we'll have a 20-minute or so discussion of whichever sutra we're on for that day. And for next week, we'll start with Sutra number 1 of chapter 1, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And that's how we'll go through the next week. It'll be the next sutra. And it really doesn't matter that you're here for all of them. Drop in when you can, and all that. And you'll just learn a little bit more as you go. These are free sessions, or what I like to call pay what you can, come even if you can't. You can, if you feel like throwing some money my way, or tips, or whatever you want to look at it, you can do that via PayPal, Venmo. If you're local, barter is great too. If you want to put a roll of toilet paper on my front porch, or food, or music, or whatever you have for barter, what your skills are, your crafts, the things that you make, I would be delighted by that as well. But mostly, I just want us I just want to put this out there to the community, because I think during these times, it's very important that we have things like this in our yoga practice. And for me, this type of thing is even more important right now than, say, my physical practice of yoga, or my asana, standing on my head, doing sun salutes and all those things that I love from a physical aspect. But what's going to get me through these kind of times is the other aspects of yoga that I'm going to talk to. But I want to talk a little bit about my background really quickly as well. I'm a yoga practitioner and what I call a seeker, or like to think of as a seeker. I do teach asana-centric classes at different studios around the Orange County area where I live, in yoga studios, fitness centers, recovery centers, assisted living facilities, those type of things. I have a 200-hour yoga, Hatha Yoga certification, and about 100 plus hours of other types of trainings from different teachers around the country. I've taught about 600 plus classroom hours of yoga, and have 1,000 or more hours in my personal practice as well. And my regular practice, my daily practice, includes all aspects of yoga, what I call the big yoga. That includes asana, which some of us think of as yoga. I call that thinking, or that type of yoga, little yoga with a little y, meaning it's just asana centric. But yoga is so much more. And in my personal practice, I do all of those things: breathing, meditation, chanting with that meditation, self-study, those types of things. And I think, again, they're super important in these times. We're in California, we have a stay-at-home order from our government, or our governor, which means we're supposed to stay at home except for essential activities. And this is the kind of stuff, meditation, breathing, that is really conducive to peace of mind during these times. And that self-study or svadhyaya is also super important. It's a time for us to reflect. Maybe we have some time now to maybe figure out other things we want from a yoga practice or from other knowledge that we might have. And then I also wanted to quickly go over the Yoga Sutras. So what is this all about? This is something I love. It's probably going to come out, my passion for the Yoga Sutras here. The Yoga Sutras are something I study daily. They're part of my personal practice every day. I chant them. But the Yoga Sutras are a really ancient tradition that came out of the Indian subcontinent. It was developed by Shramanas, which is a Sanskrit word that could mean seeker or it could mean striver. You heard me call myself a seeker. I feel like that's the more easily assumed meaning of the word for a guy like me. The strivers, that kind of more rigorous definition of Shramana, are the people that are really going out there and developing the big thinkers. And basically back in about the 6th century BCE, so 3,000 years ago or so, the Shramanas developed out of the Vedic traditions, and they were seeking alternatives to the rigid Vedic religious hierarchies, and the Brahmins and priests of their time, looking for a way to become a more realized human being, I suppose you could say, without the dogma and strictures and other things that they did. And they went in all different directions looking for that knowledge. And I really consider it actually wisdom over knowledge. And that's maybe a very subtle difference there. And this knowledge that they came up, that developed is more of a philosophy. It's a way of living as opposed to a religion. Again, they were trying to kind of get outside of that rigid structure of most religions. Again, I'm not passing judgment on that. In fact, religion and faith, one of the things I love about the Yoga Sutras is religion and faith can sit right on top of the yoga philosophy. They can just dovetail right in. And that, one of the things I like about the Yoga Sutras is they are agnostic from that perspective. They, the way I interpret them is that they acknowledge that there is a pure awareness out there, a higher power, something out there, but they're not as concerned about what it is. They don't name any gods or things other than Ishvara, which is the divine ideal of pure awareness, and the way I interpret it. So there's nothing here. A lot of people confuse yoga with religion, and sometimes people that are very orthodox or fundamental in their religion think yoga is a competitor or something that could be against their faith. And I will just say that I don't believe that is so, if you have the knowledge. And that's one thing that maybe will come to you here. So the Yoga Sutras in those 3,000 years ago, it was transmitted orally, or not the Yoga Sutras, I should say, the yogic knowledge. It was orally transmitted from teachers to students. And then about the 2nd century CE, so after, in the Western world after Christ, Patanjali, who was a shramana, a striver, a yogi, he codified this knowledge. So he wrote it down. And that's what we'll be studying. He wrote it down in a formalized scriptural form of sutras. Sutras can translate to threads. So sutras are very small aphorisms or sayings that pack in a lot of knowledge into very few words. And that's where it becomes subject to interpretation and translation and all those things that are packed with meaning. So even though he wrote that down, it's not necessarily easy to unpack without a teacher or commentary and those types of things. So sometimes it still requires fleshing out by teachers or commentaries or a lot of research, which is sort of part of what I do. And that codification of the Yoga Sutras is what has come down to us after several centuries of time. And that knowledge is subject to the vicissitudes of time. So it's a lifetime study to really understand, feel like you have a handle on the Yoga Sutras. Just like any philosophy of life, it takes, a while to get your arms around life and come to peace with yourself, as many of you probably know. And we're never sure that we have that knowledge, especially here, maybe in the West. Yoga had to go underground, for instance, during the colonial period when the British suppressed yoga. And I have kind of a pet theory that part of the reason that asana became yoga is that was maybe the least threatening to the colonial powers. They were more threatened by the other parts of yoga that were perceived as knowledge that was non-Western or whatever, and they weren't as threatened by yogis standing on their heads for hours or whatever they were doing, or doing, quote, circus tricks. So there's that. And I just want to say a couple more things before we do a sample meditation or a short meditation to demonstrate how we're going to proceed with this in the next weeks about the Yoga Sutra. So you've heard me maybe talk about asana and the Yoga Sutras. So I'll just spoil the study a little bit or give you a little bit of overview. Yoga through the Yoga Sutras is an 8-armed practice. So there's 8 parts of yoga that we'll slowly go through as we go through this meditation and study. And those 8 parts of yoga are the yamas, that's how we behave towards others. The niyamas, that's how we behave towards ourselves. Then asana, which we kind of have a handle on. That's the physical practice. But in Patanjali's time, it simply meant how to be comfortable in your body so you could sit. Asana in Sanskrit means seat or to sit. The 4th arm is pranayama, which is breathing. Then there's pratyahara, which is control of the senses, how to kind of not necessarily shut down our senses, although maybe in the higher aspects of yoga, maybe they were able to do that. We can shut down our sight by closing our eyes. 99%, we're still going to detect light in the rods in our eyes that are our sensors for light. So it's not completely shut down. We can't shut down our hearing, our smell, those kind of things, our tactile touch. We're going to feel the sensations in our body of touch. But we can train our brain to kind of not respond to those if we have that. So, and then after that is dharana, which is concentration, one-pointed focus on an item or an object. Dhyana, which is meditation, that's what I'm calling this. And then samadhi, which is that last stage of yoga, the goal of yoga, realization, integration, freedom, lots of ways to define that. And I kind of think that's a personal thing a bit as well. So those are the 8 parts of yoga. I'm watching the time here to make sure we have time to do a quick meditation. In the order that we're studying, one of the interesting things about the sutras and this type of scripture, philosophic scripture, is contrary to what we're used to in the West. In Eastern scripture, a lot of times they start at what we would call the end. They teach to the experts first and then the beginners. So the first of the 4 parts of the Yoga Sutra is kind of focused at experts, people that are already able to meditate and become go into nirodha or stillness. So we're going to start there just for the first few sutras of that first part, but then we're going to jump to chapter 2 or part 2, which is for novices like us, that teaches us how to get there, how to have a spiritual practice or a practice. And then we'll go through the 3rd and 4th part. We'll come back to the first part that we missed and then go on if there's interest there. And then I just want to throw out a disclaimer as well that I am, again, a practitioner, a seeker. I'm not an expert. I'm not an academic. I'm not a guru, or sometimes I can seem academic because I do a lot of research on this because I love the Yoga Sutras. And I'm also viewing this tradition through a Western lens. I'm a Westerner. I came up through Western education and philosophy and culture. And so I acknowledge that this yogic knowledge came out of other people's heritages and cultures and developments in the East. So there might be things that I understand or say about them that maybe I say because I don't have a teacher from that tradition, or I haven't got to that level of knowledge. So I just want to say that I use these teachings and this Yoga Sutra with respect and honor to all the people, teachers, past and present, that have given us this gift of yoga and the Yoga Sutras. And I do that with the best of intentions. And hopefully my biases and my ignorance won't cloud any of that for you. So that's what I have there. We're going to do a quick meditation. It's about half an hour into the call here. Again, they're going to be about 40 minutes when we go. So I wanted to do a couple of minutes example of the meditations we're going to do. But I'll pause just here if there's any questions for you. I'm just looking to see if there's any on the chat. If you want to ask a question live, you can unmute yourself and ask if there's any questions or clarifications that you need here. And if not, we'll just move into the meditation part of this. And I'll get myself set up to do that. Was there a question? I thought I heard someone unmute, but no pressure. Okay, so we're gonna start with a meditation. And just to clarify, normally if I was teaching meditation in my yoga classes, we would prepare for that. We might do some simple asana or things to help you be comfortable in your seat. I want you to come to these sessions ready to do that. So if there's stretching, if it's the morning or afternoon, it doesn't matter when it is. If there's stretching you need to do so that you can sit comfortably for that 20 minutes of meditation, you should do that. Find a comfortable position. For a lot of us, especially in the West, it's sitting up. I'm sitting on my chair, my therapy ball right now. Something that allows me to have a spine in neutral, upright spine. Doesn't inhibit my breathing, my ability to breathe. So maybe laying down, not great. Leaning back into your couch where you're maybe constricting your ability to breathe a little bit is not great. But you do you, whatever way you can be comfortable. If you're on a phone or you're on your computer, maybe you have to sit in front of it. Maybe you don't. Once the meditation starts, it really doesn't matter that you are looking at the video or not looking at the video, your phone's there. You just need to be able to hear the audio. So, you know, and for some of us, maybe you have to have your tea or your coffee before in order to be able to focus. Whatever you need to be ready to do that. So next week when we start, we'll basically start with those 2 meditations, and then we'll have the discussion. This is kind of in the opposite order, just because I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction. So again, for the first part, I am just going to be chanting. I'm going to be chanting a sutra every 10 seconds or so. You're going to be taking an inhale and an exhale. I'll keep my video on so you can kind of see how I'm breathing and you can try to mimic that. We'll go from there. So we're going to do about 2 minutes of the first meditation, which again is chanting only in Sanskrit. And so I would invite you to take a few breaths, find that posture that you're going to sit in for your meditation. Eyes can be opened or closed. There's not going to be anything but me to look at for this first meditation. So whatever works for you. Some people just like to half lid their eyes or look slightly down. Again, that's just a way of shutting off the sensations that are coming from the outside world. So again, we're going to meditate for about 2 minutes while I chant. So take a couple of breaths and then just get your breath to start to sync with everybody, with mine and everybody else's as we go here. So here we go. I'm going to take a nice inhale here. And we'll begin. Om. Ata Patanjala Yoga Darshane Samadhi Pada Pratamodhyaya Sutra Pada Ata Yoga Nushasanam Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha Taradrashtu Svarupe Vastanam Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra Vrittaya Panchataya Klishta Klishtaha Pramana Viparyaya Vikalpa Nidra Smrtaya Pratyakshanumanagama Pramanani Vipiryayo Mityayana Matadrupa Pratishtam Shabdayananupati Vashtu Shunyo Vikalpaha Abhava Pratyaya Lambana Tamo Vritir Nidra Anabhuta Vishaya Sampramosya Smrtihi Abhyasa Varagyabhyam Tenurodaha. And now just let your breathing resume its normal pattern as we come out of that first meditation. And again, I would just invite you to just let the sounds wash over you for that first part, especially for those of you that don't know Sanskrit. For those of you that might know a little bit, your mind might be interpreting all those items or those words, and that is fine as well. We're going to move on to the second part. We're going to do again in about a minute or two of that. This time I'm going to chant in Sanskrit and English. So now the chanting is still going to be a 10-second breath, but it's going to be twice on each sutra because I'm going to chant it in Sanskrit and then in English. And for this, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the words if you want. You can see those arrows that might help you with the rhythm of your breathing. So you're welcome to keep your eyes open for this as well. So let's take a breath and we will, let me share my screen and we will do that as well. So take a breath and we'll begin. Ata Patanjala Yoga Darshane Samadhi Pada. Now, Patanjali's yogic vision of integration, the Samadhi Pada. Pratamodhyaya Sutra Pada. The first part of his Yoga Sutras, sutra by sutra. Atta Yoga Nushasanam. Now, the teachings of yoga. Yogaschitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is to still the activity or the patterns of the mind. Taradrashtu svarupe vastanam. Then pure awareness can abide in its very nature. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. Otherwise, awareness takes itself to be the mind and its activity. Vrittaya panchataya klishta klishta. There are 5 types of patterns or activities of the mind, both hurtful and benign. Just let your breath resume its pattern. Natural pattern, I should say. And that's an example of the 2 meditations we're going to do. Again, once in Sanskrit only for 10 minutes in the regular call, then once in Sanskrit and English for 10 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion. Again, the opposite of what we did here. I don't know if Zoom's going to cut us off in the next 2 minutes, but again, at the end of those, we're going to then go through one of the sutras, word by word, really quickly, and then we're going to discuss it, the meaning of that particular sutra, and how it might apply to today, especially in these times, which is the interesting discussion. And we'll open it up, for discussions and questions. And if the calls run over because there's enough discussion, I'll just, if they kick us off at 40 minutes, or I don't know if they give us a grace period and there's still discussion, I'll just do another session right after that we can just use as a continue on the discussion for those that want to do that. So that's what I had to present today. I really appreciate everybody coming. If you have any questions or thoughts about what you just experienced, or feelings about how that meditation went, or how the breathing went, or how the calls are going to go in the future, feel free to unmute or send me a chat on the side bar, and feel free to drop off whenever you want. The calls are going to be weekly, same times. I've scheduled one in the morning at 7 a.m., this one, and also one at 5 p.m. here on the West Coast of the United States, so that hopefully there's a time that works for everybody in these times. If you are lucky enough, I suppose is the word, to still be working and you need to work around a work schedule, or maybe you're homeschooling your kids or whatever is going on. Hopefully there's a time that will work for everybody here. So again, welcome, and then welcome to the first session. And I hope you've heard enough of interest that you want to keep going. Next week, we'll do the very first sutra of the Yoga Sutra in discussion after our meditation and chanting. So thank you so much for coming on, and I'll just stay on till everybody leaves and just entertain any questions.